In the words of Jim Colton, what's up, golf friends? Welcome to the Driven Golf Podcast. This is not Jim Colton. This is Andrew Lewis. And also Joseph K., what does he call you? What producer? Yeah, I'll remember it a little bit.
Super producer, super looper.
Super producer. There we go. I can't believe it's the pressure of filling these shoes. And this week on the pod, episode 29, we have Josh Jacobs from College Golf Experience. And, so when we were discussing, how should we go about kind of introing this, we thought a good idea would be to have on someone who's been to one of these camps. And actually one of my clients, which is actually an interesting story of how we even met, which that's a little bit of a lead in, has been to one of these. And let me introduce Stone. Stone, what's up? Stone Fancher.
Not much.
Stone is a 2026 JJ Pierce. He practices at Sherrill Park, where I coach. And so, so Stone. So first off, when did you go to this camp? How long ago?
It was mid-December 2023. So not crazy long ago, about just under a year now.
And how did you hear about College Golf Experience?
I think I heard about it through a couple friends and guys I met in the golf world, but mainly through social media. They do a pretty good job at kind of marketing through social media, especially Instagram.
Yeah, I was just looking. I think they have like 14,000 followers on Instagram. Way more than all of us combined. And where did you go do yours?
I was at Wigwam Golf Resort in Phoenix.
Yeah, from what I've seen, I mean, they're all over the country. How did you decide to go out to Wigwam?
I don't know. I was telling my mom about it, and she was like, "Man, that seems pretty fun." And I said, "We go do that rather than like at Waters Creek or somewhere around Dallas."
Yeah, no offense to Waters Creek, but yeah, I think Phoenix in December is probably a little bit better. So dive in a little bit into kind of why you went and what was your experience like for you.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd probably been playing golf for about a year and a half then, and I mean, I didn't know too much about college recruiting, but was pretty dead set on wanting to play college golf. And so being able to go there and like talk to coaches in person, and get some new tips on course management and like mental side of the game where I've never really like explored before was pretty nice. That was kind of the reason I went.
Yeah, do you remember some of the coaches that you connected with and met, and what were some of the main takeaways on that?
Yeah, so I remember Texas Tech was there, USC, Arizona. I know Coach Wilkins was there from SMU helping run the whole thing. But yeah, being able to talk to those coaches and kind of how college players think and what a day in the life looks like pretty much was pretty good insight to know what college is going to be like.
Yeah, and an interesting note with Coach Wilkins. Go ahead.
Yeah, so with Coach Wilkins, he like at the time I was like in the process of leaving one swing coach, and so I was like asking him, I was like, "You got any guys around like Dallas Fort Worth to go to for swing lessons?" And he recommended me to you, and so now that I've been going to you, I've gotten a lot better, and so it's pretty good.
That's been great.
Good,
Yeah, I know Coach Wilkins well. That's awesome. I always say about these camps, I don't know if you would agree, is that, one, they're never going to hurt. People ask me all the time, like, should I go to one of these? It definitely costs some money, but it is such a great experience to be in an environment that you just frankly can't really create unless you're going to one of these.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to hurt, right? You're now, are you going to leave that weekend, recruited and, going to a school? Probably not, but it's definitely going to open the door to some conversations. And I think the thing that you said about recruiting and things that you may not know on tips on course management, things like that. I mean, these guys are around the best players in the country, in the world. I mean, a lot of them are still connected to PGA Tour players. So I would encourage anyone that is thinking about going to one to take your advice. I think it definitely was a springboard for, you're playing significantly better from last December. And if you're kind of on the fence about it, I definitely would. And anything else you would add, Stone, about the experience that we didn't quite cover?
Not that I can think of, but yeah, it was a great experience. Definitely getting a lot of information out of it, especially through the seminars that they have while you're there.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. And I hope you guys all enjoyed Josh Jacobs from College Golf Experience, episode 29.
Josh Jacobs, welcome to the Driven Golf Podcast. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going, Jim. How are you?
Yeah, it's going well. Hey, just really thrilled to have you. We spoke a few weeks ago, and scheduled this time to get together. So, Josh, you are the founder and the CEO of College Golf Experience, or we call it CGX. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. Like
Yeah.
like it or not, I am.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. And I want to start this conversation where our last conversation ended, and that was on deep dish pizza. So you and I have a connection, fondness for deep dish pizzas. Maybe you can fill folks in on where that connection comes from.
My dad's family was from Chicago. Jim and I bonded over deep dish, and my family is the Geno's East family. So it's just one of those things. I think we've kind of fallen off the rankings, but I think we've definitely got the most places outside of Chicago now. But I can tell you that I think when you ask people about deep dish, I don't think we're in the top 4 or 5 anymore.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I will say Geno's actually did drop down my personal rankings only because it was number one until we moved to Texas 4 years ago. Could not find good pizza anywhere. And then my wife started making her own in the last about year and a half. So, and hers, I think, is at least on par with Geno's. But Geno's, when we were in Chicago, is definitely our deep dish pizza of choice. So we can bond over that. We bond over golf. I think we'll be fast friends. So I appreciate you sharing that. So Josh, we've traded emails in the past. I've subscribed to your newsletter or your email blasts, the camps you have. Follow you on Instagram, which is College Golf X. You guys are doing great things in the junior golf landscape. Helping connect kids to coaches. And I just wanted to understand a little bit about your background in golf and how all of this has led up to this point.
Absolutely. So I played junior golf. I grew up a Tiger in SoCal, SCPGA, AJGA, and then I ended up at Emory for Division III. I kind of went the academic route. And then following that, I immediately got into sports after college. I was producing live television sports show at Fox Sports. And then a couple years later, I found myself in New York City. I helped my cousin start a technology company and ended up getting hired away by one of my clients. And I was there for 9/11. I saw it happen,
Right.
and decided that I wanted to go home. And home for me, my immediate family was in LA. And I tried to figure out what to do with my life. And I was 20, 26, 25 and a half, almost 26. And my stepmom was talking with my sister, talking about after school programs, and she said, "Hey, I don't see any golf on here, but there's certainly a lot of other sports." And I said, "Yeah, that's kind of interesting." So then I started doing research and found out that after school golf really didn't exist on campuses. And I'm sure we could talk for hours about that concept, but needless to say, we started at 6 schools in LA, and within a year and a half we were in 50 schools, and we're running camps in multiple facilities. Very recreational, though. This was very, very introductory and recreational. Nothing in the competitive space like I know we're all in now. But by the time I was done with it in 2021, we had about a 1,050,000 kids in over
Wow.
4,000 locations across the country. And I was very fortunate over my time to, I sat on the World Golf Foundation board of advisors, and PGA of America national committees, and just got to meet a lot of people in the industry. I was young, and I was fortunate to get a call from the Golf Coaches Association, and we were chatting. The head, which was Greg Gross, the former, Oklahoma national championship coach, and Greg kind of said, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing a camp business for college coaches?" And I said, "Well, no." And he said, "Well, right now, with TJ at the time, I think we were running like 2,400, 2,500 camps during the summer." So he
Wow,
said, "I
that's
think you
amazing.
can handle this." And I said, and Jim, I started doing my research, and I found out a number of things. And I was talking with parents like yourself, very highly ranked parents and players, and very low ranked players, et cetera, just competitive players who just enjoyed it. And one constant was there, and it was there's very little education about college golf and the recruiting process out there. Unless you're going to pay a recruiter a lot of money, which in some cases is great, and they really do fit that mold for what players and families need. But there really isn't a lot of general education out there, and there's really no way to make the parent the hero, which I think is really important in this story. And then the other thing that I found is every other sport has a platform like this. Whether it's showcase
Mhm.
camps, ID camps, position camps, whatever it is. And I remember when I had first started TGA, which was the first company, we used to be there was a course called Rancho San Marcos outside Santa Barbara. I'll never forget it. We had our first camp there, and there were like 8 or 10 people on a fairway, and I'm like, what is going on out there? And it was Michael Jordan who was always hosting his. I mean, obviously Michael on the golf course, right? But he was hosting his yearly guard camp in Santa Barbara.
Okay.
And so it just kind of dawned on me that everything kind of came together, and it's been a wild ride for 3 years. I can certainly tell you that. And I think the most important thing that we hear is that this is definitely something that's been needed for a long time, to give parents and players the opportunity to give them access to college coaches, but to also get their questions answered and get information that just isn't out there.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And before I do want to dig into just the programming and how you differentiate yourself from other camps and just what parents and players can expect to get out of it. I actually did want to go back to the TGA days because we've got a lot of parents. They have even younger golfers that are trying to get people into the game. We've got the bug. Like we can understand like the first time we hit a magical shot and we just like we were hooked for life. Those magical moments where you're trying to introduce even a golf club into a kid's hands for the first time. Like, what did you learn about that process in terms of introducing the game and trying to instill that love of the game, like that spark that many of us have had?
Well, I learned that number one, people always came to golf, right? Meaning you went to a golf course for a
Right.
lesson. You had to go to a driving range, and so the idea of bringing golf to the masses was extremely intriguing for a number of people. And as we know, the majority of people in this world, especially in the United States, don't play golf. And so where do you start? That's always been, even with CGX these days, I have no idea where to start the recruiting process. It goes all the way back to TGA, and that is, where do I start to learn to play? How do I get involved? So I think TGA bringing it to the masses and breaking down the barriers of accessibility, I think that's why we had a winner. If you look at it from 100,000 foot level, and that we figured out a way to make it to be able to expand within a community or a city and bring it to people who for a number of reasons there was a lot of value for them. Number one, it's not a high price point for an hour a day once a week for 6 to 10 weeks. Number two, it's at their school, so it's very safe. It's a safe haven. And number three, for the parents who don't play, which is the significant majority out there, but who want to get their kids into golf, it gives them that opportunity to try it in a day and age when these kids are doing everything under the sun every day after the week, which is nuts to me, but that's kind of the way it is right now.
No, that's awesome. I mean, I can only imagine like the impact that you've had. I mean, we talk about this with many of our guests. It's just the life changing opportunities that can come out of the game. And you think like how many kids that you actually put a club in their hand for the first time. Not everybody's gonna buy in, but there's some that are gonna get hooked, and some maybe they end up at one of your showcase camps here at CGX. I don't know if there's been an example of that's happened yet, but at
No,
some point
we've
down the
only been
road, it
going
has
for
happened.
3 years. We've only
Yeah.
been going for 3 years, so I don't know if we're quite there yet.
But you can just imagine like that could potentially happen. Someone who ends up getting a college scholarship as a result of this camp and never had any family exposure to the game, and that's just awesome.
One thing that you brought up, and I'll never forget it, you brought up that first time that a player got hooked. And what we used in the after school programs is we used real golf clubs. We brought in mats, so you could either do it off cement or grass or whatever it is. And the program's still in existence and it's still growing. But we used these limited flight balls, and they were called the Almost Golf Ball. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if you've ever heard of them, but they fly
Yep.
like a real ball. They've got dimples. And I remember in the very first class, and I was teaching it, and this little kindergartner, right? you see him hit a ball in the air and he's just watching it. And you see the look and you see the smile. And he's like, I did that. And that to me was the aha moment for the business. And that, in the very first class, to get somebody like that, to get them to be able to do that so quickly, limited flight ball and a metal club,
Right.
your odds are decent if you make decent contact. But to see that response, you kind of knew you had something at that point.
Yeah, and that's the hook, right? So the kid wants to know, like, how did I make that happen? Can I do it again? Or why didn't the next one turn out with the same result? And then then you're cursed for life, like the rest of us. But yeah,
100%.
that's awesome. So you touched on it a little bit, like the coordination with the golf coaches themselves and the GCAA. I think that's really what differentiates your camp, and really, I think, gives it a high level of credibility. I think when we spoke before, you talked about like the programming in terms of like what to expect and the curriculum of the camps. Like all of that's been sort of fueled through these conversations with the coaches. Is that correct?
Well, it's not only fueled through conversations with the coaches, but inside our walls, except for the marketing team, are all college coaches, head Division 1, and we have
Wow.
a few Division 3 college coaches. So they're helping to shape our operations. They're helping to shape our value proposition. They're helping to shape the curriculum, and so everything that we do is modeled after college golf. So I mean, I think I said it to you when we were on the phone. It is a little cliche, but college golf experience. The reason why that fits is literally what you're going to do at the camp it's just going to emulate college golf.
Yeah, I can see that you share a lot of clips on the Instagram that can really give folks a kind of a look inside of what to expect from these camps. And I think there's, I would say, like seminar, like classroom information, Q&A between with the coaches, and then the encore stuff. So maybe give folks like a feel for, if we've got these top 25 camps coming up, like what's the general kind of curriculum? What could a camper expect day to day?
Yeah, so they're going to expect multiple education seminars. The first one's on college golf, and we go through every scenario. The coaches love to talk about college golf and what it entails, and the details of it, obviously from a general standpoint. That's the first one, and then they'll do a course management and strategy seminar. Obviously, you have extensive experience with that, but and your son's obviously at a very high level. The majority of competitive junior golfers, though, they don't get a ton of instruction and course management and strategy. So giving them that, and we all know the college coaches, that's what a lot of their job is. They're not
Mhm.
instructors. They're working with the instructors of the players. So that's number two, and then number three is it's basically a recruiting seminar. It talks about it from a very high level and gives a great overview of what the recruiting process is going to be like. I mean, they do get into some granular things, obviously not on their specific schools, but they do touch upon what coaches are looking for, how to get noticed, all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty engaging. And then what also outside the education seminars, they're also doing college golf practice sessions where these coaches are simulating what they do with their players. They're doing the same drills, the same challenges, situations, all kinds of stuff that they're normally doing a day in and day out in a college golf practice session. And then through all the meals, they're eating with the coaches. So and the parents are there too. So they're constantly engaging with the coaches. And then finally, the on-course stuff. So I mean, if you're part of a 2-day camp, you're going to do the first day is going to be a college golf practice round. So they're going to be with the college coaches. You're going to be working on course management and strategy, learning how to play the golf course. And then they're going to wake up the next day and they're going to play a tournament round. They're going to go for score. Now, based on NCAA rules and camps, you can't have your tournament within a camp count for anything. There's no rankings or anything like that. But the coaches sure do like to hear the way these kids are thinking through shots and really kind of analyzing what they're doing and seeing if they're fit and seeing if they're seeing a golf course like they are or if they aren't. And then obviously the score can really matter at the end too. I mean, you're firing a 64, 65, like we're seeing at some of these top 25 camps in front of these coaches and playing with them, you're going to kind of make your mark. So it's kind of cool to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, and just to sort of stress the importance of these camps and the importance of the existence of them, I think is having just gone through this process the last few years, a lot of it's just sort of shrouded in mystery, right? Because like you see someone who might look like a coach in the distance, and you're not allowed to have any contact up to before their junior year, and it's a very interesting time, and you don't know. If that coach is interested in me, or if it's looking at another kid, like you just don't know, right? These camps, I don't know if loophole is the right term necessarily, but you're not allowed to have contact before June 15th of your junior year. But the camps really allow this opportunity for the players to get to know the coaches to get to know the players on a much more personal level, during the window of the camp, much more than just like watching them at a tournament and trying to draw some inferences at a tournament, right? So that's really, I see the biggest value for on both sides, right? Both for the players and for the coaches is just like you said, the fit. Like how do you, like a kid could have all the skill in the world, but how do you know that they're going to be, the best fit for the existing team, or the best fit in the van, or the best fit in terms of like the culture that the coach is trying to establish, right? So that it is really a two-way street there.
Yeah, there's the lot to respond to there, so hopefully I'll get it all. What I hear from coaches a lot is tournament scores get you noticed, get you in the game, but ultimately it's going to be about who you are that gets you a spot in that van. And then as it relates to tournaments, right? One of the things that's great about tournaments, obviously, is the ranking, and it's completely merit based, and it's essential to the recruiting process, way more than camps are. I think camps are starting to rise up a little bit as we continue to build out this platform. But when you're looking at these tournaments, number one, you don't know what coach is going to show up. You have no way of knowing what coach is going to come watch you. And I've actually been told by a couple different coaches now that they'll show up to a tournament without a logo on, because they don't want to have,
Swarmed.
either make a player nervous, or they don't want to, it's kind of interesting. I've heard that now from multiple coaches. But yeah, I wouldn't really call it a loophole. I think that it's, recruiting is starting to happen so much earlier these days. And so not only that, but junior golf is getting much deeper. The depth and the level of players, I think still right now, the boys' side's a little bit deeper than the girls' side. That's what I hear from the coaches. But overall, it's a matter of how are you going to stand out? How are you going to, Jim, as you said, find your fit, right? And so these players are going to be more and more bunched up in terms of scoring average and finishes, et cetera. So who's going to get that spot? And if it's between two players, I mean, I got to believe that a coach is going to be choosing a player that they know fits their personality, that they see that wants to be at that school, that it fits for them. It's there's so many intangibles outside of scores that coaches are saying now, especially with the rosters that are going to be shrinking in size to 9, they just can't miss with recruiting. So if you get to know a player, and you get to know his or her family, and you see that engagement, that interaction, and you feel comfortable there, it's only going to boost you. And the sooner that they can do that, the better, especially with that June 15th deadline. And so I think we're now becoming a small part of that recruiting process, but also one that for parents and players to come to the camps at 13, 14, 15, it also gives that education that wouldn't be there, so that parents can help guide their player to finding their fit. Otherwise,
Yeah.
without any information, how are you as a parent supposed to be able to help your player, or know what to put in an email, or know where to start? And I think that these camps can do that.
Yeah, I did want to go there from the parents' perspective, but also I guess the players as well, especially in these sessions. You mentioned just finding the coaches talking about what college golf is and what to expect. You've been around a number of these. Like, are there a number of misnomers that are dispelled, or like what are some of the most eye-opening kind of observations that you're hearing from parents around just attending the camp?
Yeah, I think more what we hear about is from the coaches, not necessarily from the parents. I gosh, I'm trying to think of some of these. I think that um, number one, what tournaments to play in and how to set your schedule. You hear a lot of that talk, because parents are always wondering, where do I play? What tournaments do I play in?
Mhm.
Because Jim, not everyone is of your kid's caliber, so they're always trying to figure out, how do I plot my path. I also hear a lot that scores aren't everything. Um, and then I think that I'm trying to think of like a third one that's a really good one. Um,
Do coaches ever get into this like what not to do, like the horror stories? Do they ever share like that stuff, sort of stuff?
yes, you hear a lot of that. So you hear a lot of what not to do on the golf course. You hear a
Okay.
lot of what not to put into communication. And then I'll give you an interesting one. I'm not sure if it's what not to do, but coaches like to see players hit bad shots in tournaments. They actually say, the majority of them say, I'd rather see you hit a bad shot than a good shot because I want to see how you respond. So I think that's really interesting because I mean, how many junior golfers, if we polled them, said, "Hey, would you rather hit a good shot or a bad shot in front of a
Right.
coach?" I'd venture to say almost 100% are going to say they want to hit a good shot. And so, if I think there's so much to tell. At least what the coaches say, there's so much to tell from a bad shot and how a player handles that and how they're
Yeah.
treating their parents before, after, and during a round. It's quite eye opening.
Yeah. I always say like a bad shot's an opportunity just to showcase your recovery skills, right? Like if you can get sort of excited about this, like I'm gonna go show this coach what I'm capable of. I'm gonna make a par here out of no man's land. So yeah, it's a huge
Yeah.
opportunity. Yeah, so that's really cool, and I think I do want to talk about the sort of the on-course stuff because I think you mentioned it, like the course management. I do see that as a gap as well, even at the highest levels, quite honestly. And I think that's where you see kids when they get to college, the ones that are able to make sort of that leap is they're starting to get those finer points either from the coaches or just through trial and error. But I think having that leg up, having that exposure with the coaches and getting a number of different perspectives because you're getting whatever 6, 8 different coaches in interacting with them on the course of over the course of a camp, like that has to be just a lot of gold that you wouldn't really be able to get otherwise.
No way. I completely agree with you. You're not going to get it anywhere else. I hear it from both the men's and women's coaches. A lot of these players can hit the ball a country mile, but they really don't know how to play a golf course. And you think about just everything is so fine in golf. It's so close that we do a type of camp called a tournament prep camp, and it's typically in front of the day before during a practice
Mhm.
round of a junior golf tournament. I mean, imagine being able to be out there with 4 college coaches, where even if you take one or two things away that may save you 1 to 2 shots during that competitive round, 1 to 2 shots saved over 20, 30, 40, 50 rounds of golf, that's going to move the needle for you a lot. So, I mean, we're starting to see people sign up for these camps almost just to get the course management and strategy lessons and to get it kind of ahead of the game on that specific tournament. So I couldn't agree with you more. It's definitely something that's not prevalent because most of them are fitness coaches, swing coaches, and oftentimes mental coaches too. But you're not really spending a lot of time on the golf course with that coach. So I think giving the opportunity, or your swing coach. So giving
Mhm.
yourself an opportunity to be not only in front of college coaches, but then to learn these course management and strategy lessons, invaluable,
Yeah.
invaluable at that age.
Yeah, that's great. Speaking of age, like you mentioned earlier, like 13, 14, 15, is that sort of the sweet spot? Or are you, or is it really any junior?
I would say, coaches, we try to make the camps, have as many competitive players. It was funny. I was talking with someone on the way down here to La Costa. I'm at La Costa where the NCAAs are being played. But I was driving down, and someone, a parent called and said, "Hey, what are the ages of your camps?" And we start them as young as 11 if you want to come to a camp. I think the sweet spot is kind of 13 and a half to 16 and a half, 17 that we're seeing. But ironically, we're starting to see them come in a little bit younger for those who want education on college golf and the recruiting process. And then the irony behind it is we're starting to get some college players who are coming to the camps because they're looking to transfer. It's
Oh,
crazy.
wow. I would have never thought that.
So we've seen that happen, and we actually had to, because I called our coaching staff. I sent a Slack out. I didn't call. I sent a Slack out, and I said, "Hey, we have a college player who wants to sign up for a camp. Is that admissible?" Because we didn't know the rules, and we had to check with a compliance department, NCAA, and they said, yeah, you can have a college golfer sign up for a camp. It was pretty neat. Yeah.
Actually, that's a really good segue. So let's talk about the current landscape of golf, because it is a
You're
bit
not
of
really going to go there. Are you going there, Jim? Really?
Well, I think it's relevant to this discussion. You mentioned the 9 roster limit, but I think it's impacting where kids, where they thought they were going to get looked at and where they're currently getting looked at or maybe not getting looked at. And I think if anything, it just heightens the need for this exposure that can come through the camps, right? Just having as many tentacles out as possible. But
it's only going to help you. It's only going to help. 100%.
Yeah, but
yep.
You mentioned the transfer portal as well. What I see is, these 2025 kids, they may be verbally committed, signing days coming up here in just a few weeks, but they may not have a spot. They may physically not have a spot. And now they're left scrambling because other kids have committed. They've told other coaches no, so they're probably trying to rekindle some of these old relationships. But for the past year or so, they thought that they were going to this school. And now you're competing against the transfer portal because a lot of kids are going to be displaced, and kids are already currently playing, college golf, and you have to compete with them as well.
100%.
So I think it has been a major disruption, and hopefully, it'll settle down. But do you see this impacting the camp and the interest in the camp, and just parents that are probably reaching out to find out more about the camps?
I think there's going to be more interest to get in front of the college coaches and really know what's going on. At a camp, coaches aren't allowed to talk about their specific situations. They have to keep it general. So you can't go to a camp and say, hey, how many spots do you have left in 2026? The coaches can't answer that at a camp. So I think, just as we talked about, the depth is going to become, that much greater. And so you're going to have your tournament resume stand out more with who you are. And to do that ahead of time and to get one of those spots, camps are going to be a great way to do that. It's the college golf landscape, we talked about it a little bit, with this 9-player roster. I think we figured out that I think it's mid 400s or low 500 players will get displaced, which means they're either going down to D2, they're going down to D3, or they're just not going to play college golf. So the parity in college golf, it's only going to increase. The level of play is only going to increase because each team is going to have that many more great players on a 9-player roster. So I think for college golf, it's going to help things, but for the recruiting process, I think it's going to continue happening earlier and earlier.
What I see is it's going to bring players to maybe consider, I don't know what the right term is, but the second tier schools that maybe weren't on the radar originally, they should definitely be on the radar. And those schools are going to be much, much more competitive as from a golf standpoint. And we talked about this last time with Luke's instructor, Andrew, is I think the fit becomes that much more important, because you could really, if you find a coach that's really geared towards development, that could be a differentiating factor for a small school. And once you're out of school, if you're trying to play professional, no one really cares what college you went to, right? They just only care about what skills you bring to the table and how low you can go under the gun. So yeah, there's going to be, this disruption, but I think in the end, like you said, I think college golf will be elevated as a result, just because you're going to have more competitive programs, top to bottom.
100%. And I also see D3 taking a real step forward. I think D3 is going to become even deeper than it is now.
Yeah.
Because of this, I know coaches are already salivating over recruiting opportunities because of the 9-player roster. Because then you're really left. I mean, D1 and D2 programs, that's going to be your scholarships, right? So how many parents do you hear say D1 or bust? And now it's kind of, hey, because of the transfer portal. I mean, there's so many variables that we're talking about, right, Jim? So because of that transfer portal, you just got to get in the game. Either D3, D2, NAIA, whatever it is, you just got to be in the game. So once you can do that, you can plot your course. But how many players really want to go to 2 to 4 different colleges over a 4-year span, and what's supposed to be the best 4 years of your life if you're not turning pro early, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Finding that fit, like you say, you've got to have all the information, and the coach is going to want to have all that information and feel that much more comfortable with players and parents.
Yeah. So you spoke of D3 schools. A lot of them are very high, academic programs. Like Emory is a perfect example, right? Having that degree at Emory, that's going to set you up, your trajectory for life, honestly. And I did want to dip into this area where I honestly know nothing about, or next to nothing about. You have a lot of camps geared towards Ivy League schools, from what I could tell,
Well,
and
I
they're
wouldn't say a lot. We have two schools that are just Ivy League, but
okay.
we have a lot of camps that are geared towards academic, highly academic institutions.
Yeah, and I see a lot of online discussion with parents and of junior golfers that this sort of targeting Ivy League schools or targeting these academic institutions. Like, how are these camps different, and like what information are you providing to again demystify this whole process in terms of what these top schools are looking for?
Well, I wouldn't say that the camp is really run any differently. I think the info, for whether it's the D3 camps or academic exposure or Ivy camps, there really isn't that much different in the format. I think what's different that comes out is kind of the recruiting process. There's a real unique recruiting process for each one of those, especially the Ivy. So, yeah, nothing's really different in terms of the way we structure the camp, but the information that comes out of it and the access to the coaches is tremendous. I mean, there is not one Ivy League program right now that does not have a player on their roster that came from one of our camps.
Wow.
So the average number of players that get signed from our D3 camps is like 4. So it's really a place for these coaches and where they go, and that's one of the reasons why I say scores aren't everything. It's a little bit different with D3 than it is, I think, with D2 and D1. And then it's you got to be that I think you actually have to be that much more of a fit for the school, for the coach, for the program. That fit to me is even more important than D1 and D2. I think because D1 and D2, I mean, you're there to golf for the most
Hmm.
part, right? And D3, it's not that you aren't, but I think D3 brings in more of the old student athlete motto than the other ones right now. So, but let's not get started on college athletics. That'll take us down a rabbit hole.
Well, I did want to explore the Ivy League part a little bit because again, like I haven't dipped my toe into this space, but the academic piece of it and balancing the academics in golf, is this something that kids really are fully aware of, like what they're getting into if they're going to chase down this path? And one thing I have noticed is some of these Ivy League schools are starting to get like top 50 players, top 50 ranked players in some of these recent classes. So there's definitely a demand, beyond like any sort of scholarship money, because that's not on the table. So chasing that degree and being able to play golf at the same time, but then that brings its own set of demands to be able to balance both the golf and the academics.
Yeah, I think it's got to be a real unique fit. I mean, you talk about some of these Ivy League schools getting these amazing recruiting class. I mean, look at the Princeton women class from, I think it's either this year or coming in next year. I mean, I think they had 2 of the top 30 players in the country. So pretty amazing for an Ivy League institution to grab that. But yeah, you hear a lot about that, right? Especially in cold weather, which almost all of them, well, all of them are, especially at the Ivy League. It is very difficult to manage your academics and athletics from what I hear, and it just has to be a very very special student, and that's what they're looking for, right? You're talking
Yeah.
about maybe 2 spots a year from all over the world that are trying to go to those schools and play golf.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you talk about finding your fit. That's got to be a real special fit, and Ivy League coaches, they're so knowledgeable and they're so educated on who's going to do well at our school versus those that don't. I mean, I'd be willing to bet that they potentially pass up on a better player, thinking that that player may not make it in school or may not continue to play golf. So I need to kind of hedge my bets. I don't have any information on that, but I'm just kind of guessing.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
Because just I think the word is the academic rigor that those players go through at Ivy League schools is, second to none.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the job description as a coach, right? You're trying to project this person to 6 years out in the future, right? Yeah,
Yep.
that's interesting. So let's shift gears a little bit to the top 25 camps you have upcoming. I would say probably the bulk of at least probably our listeners are kids that want to play high level D1 golf or want to see if they can chase it professionally and just see how good they can be. It seems like this is the sweet spot for these top 25 camps. I believe like last year it was branded like top 100 for like top 100 ranked kids. Is this sort of the natural evolution of that?
It is. So what we got a lot of, and by NCAA rules, is as you know, anyone can participate in a camp that wants to, regardless of their aptitude. So you can't control that in any way, shape, or form. And so these camps, the idea spawned from the coaches within our organization, and we were thinking about how to make it that much more appealing to top 100 ranked players in their class. So that's where top 100 came from, and then we started getting parents calling us up saying, "Hey, my kid's 130th. Can they play at this camp?" And it's like, "Oh, so you don't really know the rules." And so we got a little bit concerned about the brand, and this is just the natural evolution of a business too. I mean, we're only in year 3, so we came up with top 25 to signify the top programs in the country, and we've kept it where in order to be invited as a program, you had to be ranked in the top 25 in the last 12 months of the year. So, I mean, you've got, 30, 35, maybe 40 programs on the men's side every year, and you probably got, 30 to 35 on the women's to pick from. And we do 3 of them at the Division I level. So you're getting 24 coaches on the men's side, and you're getting, 6 coaches at each camp on the women's side. So you're getting 18 coaches. But yeah, we had 2 SEC schools sign players from last year's top, we'll call them top 25 camps. So it's starting to happen, and we're seeing that happen more and more at all of our camps. I got a call this morning from a coach at a camp in North Carolina. I'm not allowed to say which coach it is, but they signed a player from a tournament prep camp at a Tar Heel Junior Tour event, a pretty good school in the Southeast, and they're like, "Hey, I just want to let you know I just took this player from this camp, and thanks again for having me." It was pretty neat. It was pretty neat. We're starting to see that more and more.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you can find out more about these camps in collegegolfx.com. I know you post a lot about these camps on your social media, but I tell you, just looking at the list, these are the schools that kids want to go to. These are the top name schools, and a lot of the teams that are competing for conference championships and making match play in the NCAAs and competing for national titles. And I think, like you said earlier, like having the exposure to all of these coaches all in one area, and it looks like you're going to some pretty nice places too, from what I could tell. So, yeah, it's a pretty awesome thing that you put together.
Yeah, it's not bad. I think we lead with Chateau Alon. Obviously next to AJHA headquarters, and they've been wonderful to us. And they sponsor a dinner on Saturday night, and everyone gets to go over to the
Oh, cool.
AJHA headquarters and hang out, which is really cool. Chateau Alon used to host a number of AJGA events. I know they don't anymore, but it's a great place to visit outside of Atlanta. Very drivable for a lot of people. And then we go to the Wigwam, which actually hosts the Patriot All Americans. So college tournament
Hmm.
course. So it's a great opportunity for coaches to really compare you to college players. And then we'll end up now. It was just announced a couple days ago. We'll be at Omni Champions Gate outside of Orlando, so that's a good track as well. And the lineups are really second to none, like you're saying, Jim. I mean, even I can't tell you how many people will sign up and say, "Hey, I just want to learn from the best coaches in the country," let alone the top ranked players that are signing up and saying, "Hey, I really want to get to know these coaches. I want to learn what they're looking for, and I want to learn about them as people and show them who I am and who my parents are as people." So it's pretty cool. We've got a nice relationship now with the Tugger rankings, where there's a badge now next to the players if they're going to a top 25 camp. So that's pretty neat.
Oh, that's neat. I saw, yeah, I was just looking at my son's Tugger page, and I saw it had a link like, "Hey, you're eligible for this top 25 camp." So we just had Jeff on just a few episodes ago, from Tugger. And yeah, it's neat to see sort of the synergies and the partnerships you created. I read somewhere you have a partnership with, I think it's Drawing Circles. Is that more around like the stat tracking and analytics? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that junior golfers are starting to get more used to when it happens at the college level. So getting yourself involved early on in that and just getting in the habit of doing it and being able to analyze what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, where the improvement is, I think is a great opportunity. And the coaches will engage with the profiles at the events. So circles will be on site for the three camps, and it's I'll give you the exclusive, Jim. It'll be out on tomorrow's wire, but we've got Penguin.
Okay.
Penguin is going to be the apparel provider for the apparel partner
Wow.
for the top
Breaking
25
news.
camps. Kind of get an old school, kind of young and hip
Nice.
brand. So we're excited about to be a little something different moving forward here. So let some new blood in the water, which is cool.
Oh, that's cool. Hey, we talked a little bit about what to expect as a player or parent, but maybe a little bit different twist on that question. What advice would you give to a player and also a parent in order to get the most out of the camp experience?
Ask questions. That's to me, that's the most important thing is to ask that. That's number one is the coaches are there and they know what to expect. And we warn them. People are going to ask you questions about college golf, about the recruiting process, and be open to answering. And one of the things that you learn at these camps is that these coaches are just human beings, and you don't have to be scared of them when the logo comes up to you behind your tee box when you're at a tournament. And I think that's one of the intangibles that you get out of coming to these camps is that it humanizes these coaches, and it gives you confidence talking to them and playing in front of them. So whether you see them at a tournament or you have a coach who asks to have a phone call with you, it gives you that experience that can really help you. So that to me is number one, is the education that comes out of it. Number two, be open to learning. There's a lot of players out there who, hey, I'm really good, right? I know how good I am, but you're gonna see things and learn things from these coaches, especially the top 25 camps. Not to put down any of their coaches, but these coaches got to this spot for a reason. You're gonna learn new things, new drills, new way of looking at shots, etc. Just be really open to soaking in the information. And then number three is really try to engage them. Be outgoing to the coaches. If you're in the fairway and you've got a shot coming up and you see a college coach on the other side, like if I'm in these camps, I'm calling them over and saying, hey, let's talk through this shot.
Mhm.
So if you can do all three of those things, you're gonna do really well at these camps and you're gonna get a lot out of them.
Yeah, I would say maximize the access to those coaches as much as possible because a lot of them, look, they've had very good players and they've had very good players who try to play professionally and don't quite make it. They have very good players make it to the highest echelons of the game. And I think just trying to understand like what differentiates those players, or if you knew of an alum, like, yeah, I see Alabama on here, it's like, hey, what did Justin Thomas do really well that differentiated himself from literally every other player that's been through the gates at Alabama, as just an example? Or like what are the things that you saw in terms of his habits, in terms of his approach that really differentiated him as a golfer, where you just sort of knew that this guy had something different, right? Like those
Absolutely.
things, I think you can learn. It really gives you a leg up. I think just just knowing that. Like where else would you get that opportunity to really ask that question unless you were having a one-on-one recruiting conversation with Alabama, which might never happen.
Correct. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, and that certain things that you're going to be able to learn for yourself at those camps. Even to make that what you're saying a little bit broader. I mean, the panels that you get at these top 25 camps, asking the question of, hey, what in your mind differentiated the players that went on to play professional golf versus the ones that didn't? How did they act? What did they do? What were their habits? All of those things. You get one tidbit out of that and worth the price of admission. I mean, I can't tell you how many
Yeah.
parents we get, let alone the players, how many parents we get that even after the first session, they're like, that was worth it. I'm good. And now we have coaches telling my son or daughter what I've been trying to tell them, but they don't listen to me. So that one's always kind of funny.
Yeah. So parents, like this happens in youth sports across the spectrum. I've been on both sides. I've been anywhere on the spectrum. But in terms of parent behavior at the camps, like what do you say is like best practice and things to avoid or not to do as a parent at a camp?
I would say take the opportunity to engage when it's there, but don't be on top of your player. It's interesting because parents want to soak in the information too, right? I mean, if 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 you've got four of the top 25 coaches in the country going over a putting drill or going over short game drills or whatever it is, you as a parent want to listen in, and you want to be able to guide your player to do that or to help them moving forward. um, it's important to be there but not be on top of your player. There's been some occasions where I've been like, hey, you need to get off the tee box with your player, right? This is, you number one, I don't say this, right? I just kind of help them
Yeah.
move. But number one, you want to let your player shine. But number two, if you're a parent and you're on a tee box and a coach sees that, it's not a good look. But I think being able to engage when the opportunity presents itself with the coaches, they know that the parents are going to ask questions. They expect it, and they want to be there to support them. The coolest part about this is the coaches want junior golfers to play college golf, whether it's for them or another program. They want to
Mm.
help you get there. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard a coach say at a camp, hey, I love this player. I don't have a spot, but I have four schools that I think that this person might fit with. I'm going to call those coaches, or I'm going to text or email those coaches. So getting into that network can be incredibly powerful. And a parent, engaging those coaches can get their questions answered to be able to, be the hero to the player and be able to guide their journey. So I wouldn't be too overbearing, but I would be very present and take that opportunity to engage when you see it. And don't be afraid to. The coaches know that you're going to ask questions.
Yeah, that's great advice. And that's a very important distinction you just mentioned, because I would be willing to bet that most kids and probably a lot of parents don't understand this either. Is like these top coaches, they, especially those that have been around a while, they have a family tree. They have a coaching tree, that dips into assistants that have gone on to get head coaching jobs at smaller schools, et cetera, et cetera. Like those are really probably the first schools that they're going to be calling and say, hey, I got this kid. It might be perfect for your program. So this impression that some of the schools, like maybe a school at this camp, like, well, I'm not really interested in that school, but you should be very interested in making a good impression on that coach, because you don't know what opportunity that might ultimately lead to.
Yeah, and I think we talk about the relationship sometimes between the men's and the women's programs. Some are very intertwined and some aren't. We get a lot of calls saying, "Hey, I see you have the women's program at your camp, but the men aren't going to be there. Do they talk? Would it be worthwhile for me to come to the camp just to get in front of the women's coach if you have a boy golfer?" Because I want to be able to talk to them about the men's coach. It's fascinating for all the different reasons that you hear it. I think at the Division 3 level, I think that's a decent idea, but I'm not sure at Division 1 or Division 2. But
That's
finding your fit
interesting.
at these camps, man, I'll tell you a funny story. It was one of our, I think it was like our seventh or eighth camp, and there was a player there, and he was a late bloomer. And you saw the tournament scores were getting better and better, but he really just wasn't on the radar of these coaches. But it was a D3 camp, and there were three coaches that were like, I want him. I have a spot and I want him. And I was like, okay, because I'm like listening in on how the thought process works. So you kind of had two rural schools and one urban school, right? And so I guess one of the urban schools were talking to the player, and they're talking to him about where he wants to play and what are you interested in. He's like, oh, well, I definitely want to be in a big city. So the urban coach goes up to the rural coach goes up to the urban coach and says, he's all yours. And they signed him. They
Wow.
signed him to play the next year. So it's really fascinating at what can happen. Again, it's just another indicator that tournament scores get you in the game. But this kid, his personality, who he was, that fit for these coaches, it really comes to life in this camp setting, because tournaments can be extremely stressful. I'm sure you know this, Jim, right? I mean, tournaments can be stressful on these
Sure.
players. Yeah, sure. The more you play in a year and the better you are, the more comfortable you are. But for a lot of these players, even ones that are going to be playing high level college golf, it can be stressful. So these camps kind of lower the temperature a little bit and kind of bring out your personality. And that's really important for when it comes to finding your fit.
Yeah, that must be really rewarding for you, just having started this, like actually seeing those moments and seeing those experiences and seeing these fits come together. Right, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's very rewarding when you create the platform that kind of creates that engagement between player and coach. I'll tell you one of the most impactful stories that I had. It was in our second ever camp. It was actually here at La Costa. And the day was ending up and the sun was going down, and I had these two female parents come up to me and they were crying. And I said, "Oh my God, who got hurt?" Because in my TGA days, right, any parent that's crying, some kid gets hurt. And they're like, no, nobody got hurt. And they said, "We just want to thank you." And I said, "For what?" And they said, "Well, we had no idea where to start. We're not golfers. We're not a golfing family. Our kids are good, but we have no idea how to start the recruiting process. So the education that we just learned from these coaches really gives us a chance to help our daughters."
Mhm.
And that for me is really great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like you said, you're really in your infancy in all of this. Like this is just being year 3. Like what do you see? What's on the horizon for years 4 or 5 and beyond?
It's funny. Somebody asked me that also on the way down. I have no idea. Oh, I'll tell you, I don't know. I think the only thing that I know where we're going for sure is that the international market is starting to
Okay.
expand. I always liken it to because with TGA, I uh, we did not only golf, we did tennis, and so right now in tennis, it's over 50% international players in college golf. Excuse me, in college tennis.
Mhm.
So I think college golf right now is either at 24 or 26%. We're starting to see more and more coaches want to start recruiting internationally. So we're starting to get more and more inquiries about, hey, can you bring a camp over here to this country? Or we're now starting to work with like the Mexican Federation of Golf, and we did a camp in Canada, and we had 2 players get signed from that one camp.
Wow.
So now we're launching, I think, 5 to 7 events in Canada. So it's pretty
Yeah, and
cool.
when you say 25%, it seems like it's very bifurcated, right? There's schools that lean very heavily in international kids and other programs that don't ever recruit international kids. They just haven't figured out how to solve for that. They've sort of found their sweet spot. So maybe over time you end up seeing these things kind of merge in the middle a little bit. So one last thing I wanted to mention, I haven't seen these recently, but you would do these Zoom calls with sets of coaches, every week or every other week. Is that something that you're going to be instilling this off season?
Yeah, we actually just I did one last it was either Wednesday or Thursday. We're starting to do a
Oh,
little
okay.
bit of a rivalry series. So we had the oldest rivalry in college sports. So we had Harvard, Yale, and Princeton on their
Oh,
men's
there you go.
coaches, which was kind of cool. And I'm going to try to do one every other week.
Okay.
So
All right.
yeah,
Well, that's a good way to end. So, College Golf X on the social medias, collegegolfx.com, I believe is the website to find out more information and to sign up from these camps. We've got the top 25 camps coming up. Is there still spots in these upcoming camps, or is there deadlines that players
the
and parents
Chateau
need to
Lawn
meet?
camp. I think there's only 2 spots left on the boys, but otherwise, yeah, there's still spots left. There's still spots
Okay.
left.
All right. We're encourage folks to, if they got a lot out of this interview and want to find out more information, to go there, sign up for these camps. Like I said, there's a huge value proposition and a value add to these camps that I think is obvious after speaking with you for this hour or so, Josh. And I just really appreciate everything that you're doing for the game and for these kids. It's really fantastic.
Well, I appreciate that. And Jim, I'm sure everyone appreciates you sharing your expertise going through what you just went through over the past couple of years. So kudos to you, kudos to your son. And Vanderbilt has a good place in my heart too. When I was at Emory, my high school sweetheart played at Vanderbilt.
Oh,
Uh,
fantastic.
so I got to go there a few times
Yeah.
and tag it. So it was cool.
All right. And if you're ever in Dallas and want to have the #1 ranked deep dish pizza at the Colton House, you're more than welcome.
Oh, man. I'm not sure that's something I could pass up.
All right. Thanks, Josh. I really appreciate the time.
All right, guys.
All right, Andrew Lewis. Welcome back to the Angle of Attack with Andrew Lewis.
Hey, man.
Hey, I forgot to shout out Straka in the last time. I know this one might get a lot of viewership, so I wanted to shout out Straka. And we talked about tournament prep last time, preparing for a tournament. You said trust in your process. I think part of that is getting the Straka yardage book. You might as well save 20%. Use code DRIVEN. Save a little money. They now have this high risk thing. We used that for the first time this past
Did you
week.
use it?
Yeah, it looks pretty.
Man,
pretty
I
cool.
don't like change. I went old school.
I thought the one advantage would be on a course that's particularly tree lined. The aerial of like knowing the size, getting a sense of the size and the scope of the trees, as opposed to just like the 2D graphic of the trees.
Sometimes though, the shadows make it look like the trees are in the fairway. So it depends on the time of day.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. They do look cool, but yeah, I don't like change.
Yeah, it's a little extra, but you might as well save some money while you're at it.
That's
use
true.
code DRIVEN. So this is sort of an offshoot from our last conversation. We talked about the recruiting landscape and this disruption that's happening with the NCAA settlement and the roster limits, really putting a lot of like pressure on the junior golf system. And this, I know this is a hot button topic for you in particular. One of the things, I think it's actually maybe coming into play around the decision to withdraw from tournaments. I think we need to take time out and we need to have a public service announcement around WDs, what they mean, when it's valid, you should absolutely not consider it, all the ramifications around it. Because I know everybody's going to shoot bad rounds. You may have a round that's going horribly wrong, but now you've got ratings implications that are probably more important than ever. You've got kids that thought they were going to be recruited by schools, and the coaches are maybe not getting back to them. Just given everything that's going on. You have other kids that maybe committed, and now they've been told that they're not going to have a spot next year. So this kind of pressure that everybody is under, I think, can influence this decision in the moment to WD when things aren't going well. So I wanted to get your take on it, because I sense that you're seeing more and more of this in the tournaments that you're going to. And like, what do we need to tell parents and players around this topic?
Man, that's a broad thing you just threw at me. I think I would start with that. Yes, I do see, every event that Cameron plays in, or when I'm paying attention. In fact, I was looking at an event today and someone was 10 over through 9 and maybe they were injured. I'm going to guess that they just quit. And so I think the starting point is I think it's just a really bad precedent that we're setting, because everyone sees what everyone's doing. We all know what's happening. The typical thing is someone's playing bad and they just stop playing, whether it's after 7 holes or after 17 holes, they just quit. And I think that this precedent that we're in, whether that's the parents or the kid, there's something happening where we feel like it's okay to tell a kid, or a kid feels like they should just quit because I'm not playing well. And I'm pretty sure they would say, I don't want this to go on my ranking. And I don't know where that's coming from, but I think that we have got to do something to stop it. And my advice to these tours is, unless there is a justified withdrawal, like someone is throwing up. For example, last summer, Cameron has withdrawn once in his entire junior career. That was last summer at Bridlewood. He was throwing up on the 15th fairway. He didn't even want to tell me. He wanted to keep playing. I was like, we are getting out of here. I was worried at heat stroke. That is the only time that someone should be able to, is if it is justified for some reason like that. Other than that, the tours have got to grow a backbone and start penalizing these kids in some fashion with some type of ban for a couple months, because it is not going to stop. And there are a lot of repercussions. And you're doing these kids a disservice, because I can speak from me and coaches that I've talked to. What's happened, what these kids think that they're doing is they think that they are saving this from going on their record. But I promise you, when someone goes and shoots a 90 that I think is a good player, I don't think anything different about them after they post a 90. I just think you had a bad day. But when they withdraw from the event, my opinion of them is completely different now. And I think that they are soft. I think that they are selfish. There's a lot of things that go through my head. And I think that they are trying to play this game. And I guarantee you that college coaches think the same thing. And so you honestly would be doing these kids a good thing, these tours would, if there was more of a penalty, because then they wouldn't do this and they wouldn't ruin. I mean, it's almost on the lines of cheating. Like, we all know kids that have a cheating reputation. Like, when you get this reputation of being like a quitter or a WDer or a no-carder, it is almost as bad as being known as a cheater, which is going to follow you. And if you, I know I keep going, but if it comes down to you and another kid of similar ranking, there is no way that a coach is going to take you. They are going to choose the other one because they just have, they know that they're not going to quit. And in college golf, every score matters. I mean, they don't, but in general, yes, they do. Like, you need to be a fighter. So I know that was a long answer, but I mean, I think it's a huge problem, and it's driving me frankly crazy.
I wanted to follow up on this because I think some people may hear exactly what you're saying and saying like, that's not fair for you to say, that's not justified. There's obviously valid reasons for someone with WD.
Yes, there are valid reasons.
The issue is, I think what you said around the coaches, they don't know if it, all they have are these scores, right? Unless they were there. And
which
they have
they're
kids,
not there. I mean, they're not there for most of them.
Yeah, you've got kids that have never WD'd, and you got kids that have a WD in the record, or maybe more than one, right? So it is a bit of a scarlet letter on the kid's record. A 90 is obviously not a great thing either. That's going to roll off. The other thing is you have an opportunity to show that you are a fighter if things aren't going well in a round. Oh, maybe, okay, I'm 13 over through 10, and someone could see like I had a blow up hole, I had a 9 or a 10 on a hole. Like, I think a coach is going to be like, yeah, that is a chain of unfortunate events. That is like a one-time thing. Oh, what if the kid made 3 birdies in the last 5 holes and like turned a 90 into an 86? Coaches want to see someone that's in a fight, or someone who had a bad round, came back the next day and shot 2 under.
Yeah,
you would draw your gun. You have no opportunity to show like, yeah, that truly was an anomaly, right? This is more of the player that I am on a normal basis, on a day-to-day basis. I do think what you said is the last thing the coach wants is someone on his roster coming to a tournament. Again, you earning a spot in the tournament to come and travel in the van or travel on the plane, and you basically are giving up, and there's other guys maybe sitting at home that haven't demonstrated that. So
yeah,
it's a trade. Yes, there are ranking implications for sure. Like I said, those are going to roll off. But I think if you're, especially like we saw with a highly ranked kid in one of the younger classes, that WD, basically that player probably would have been on every coach's radar, right? Because he's young enough, he's shown some promise, he's playing against good competition, and yes, a bad score would have impacted his rankings, but probably still going to be on every coach's radar. The WD, fair or not, valid or invalid, is going to cause some coaches to basically just take a red marker and just draw it across that kid's line. That's the thing that I think people need to understand, is that the WD, yes, it's a way around the ranking implications, and maybe we need to talk about just JGS should probably just count that as a bad round, right? But
they should. They absolutely should.
That would fix a lot of this.
It wouldn't happen because there's no, like, I think the whole, not to interrupt you, but I think the whole reason that everyone's doing is because there really is no implication at this point. Like, go ahead and do it as much. If that's the case, then you honestly should just quit every time you're playing bad, because it doesn't really affect anything. Yeah. And there's no penalty, which is, I think that's the whole problem with the system, is like, no, we play junior golf. We understand there's ups and downs. I mean, I remember last year or 2 years ago, Billy Horschel shot, like, he's crying he was playing so bad. Now he just beat Rory. Like, people have bad days. I think it's my more concern is like the acceptance of this by the tours, and then who is really like driving this epidemic of a problem. I mean, and I totally agree with you about the coaches. They will definitely, I mean, I'm telling you guys, I talk to these coaches, you are not fooling anybody. Like, they know what is going on, and it absolutely changes their perspective. And so I would just be really careful, and to your point, like, everything has a consequence. I say this all the time in coaching, like, good or bad consequence. Yes. Is it bad to shoot a 90? Of course it is. That's really bad. And then that's really unfortunate that happened. that has a consequence too. I'm sure that would discourage some people. Like, man, I can't believe you just shot 90. But it's like, okay, so I withdraw. That has a bad consequence. If I had to talk to a coach and he said, hey, what happened with the 90? And I said, man, I just had a really, really bad day. I'm not feeling great with my swing. I played a hard course. It was blowing 20. It was just a bad day. Versus that same conversation of like, why did you withdraw? I just wanted to quit and I didn't want it to go on my ranking. Like, which one of those two conversations is going to go well? I mean, if you really are in the midst of this recruiting process and you're doing this, I would just imagine these conversations would be really hard. But I would also bet the coaches just aren't going to have them because you're generally going to be off the list unless you're just an elite player.
Yeah, I think folks that are maybe in this shoes. Look, we understand there's a lot at stake with these decisions, with these tournament scores, and as a parent, we want our kids to play well. But that's not always going to be the case. And I think that grit, that determination, the fight, and also the bounce back. I think the opportunity for bounce back is the thing that maybe folks are missing out on.
Yeah.
You could even have a bad month, of bad scores, but you could show like, hey, I came back the next spring and I'm lighting the house on fire. Right? People are willing to say like, yeah, that was a bad slump. That was a slump. That was a bad stretch. It happens to the best golfers in the world. I think coaches are willing to look past that if they just show that like, hey, I'm taking it seriously. I'm trying to improve my game and it's starting to show some promise. They're trying to project what you're going to look like 2-3 years from now. And they want to know like I can count on this kid, if I'm taking him on the plane.
Yeah, that's a good point on like the idea of trends versus blips. We talk about that in statistics, Jim and I have, of like it. Coaches look at trends of rounds. Like I like a majority of your rounds are good. Like when you have one bad round, that's just a blip on the radar. It could have like we said earlier, you could have had a 10, because you hit 2 balls, hit the cart path and went out of bounds. Yeah, it's a bad round when we get that. But if it's not trending that way, I wouldn't be that worried about it. If it was trending that way, I would advise, stop playing some tournaments for a second and fix your skills and then get back to it. But, this whole epidemic that's happening is a whole nother. Yeah, I'm glad we dove into it.
One last thing on this. So we're not going to name names or anything, but like you mentioned the college coaches and how every score counts. We know it's generally 5 count 4.
Yes.
However, the last thing the coach wants to see is somebody who think, well, my score wasn't going to count anyways, so I just packed it in, right? Because golf is golf. Golf is crazy. The guy who's got the low score might make an 8 in the next hole. It happens, right? And all of a sudden you're thrust into position where you could have turned, say, a 6 over round to a 3 over round and counted, but you went to 6 over round and turned it into an 11 over round, or just ended up packing it in altogether. So I think coaches, they just want to know that you're not going to be that guy, right? I think this is an opportunity to show like, I'm not that guy. When things may go horribly wrong, I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to stay focused and do my best to be positive and try to turn a bad round into something, salvageable.
Yeah, I think that when, I won't name coaches, but when I talk to coaches about players, when they tell me about the kid that I coach, they'll say something like, I just love how much of a competitor, I'm not going to say XYZ, how much of a competitor that guy is. And, that's what they want. They want someone who desires to be the best version of themselves and who tries really, really, really hard. So again, I just think those conversations are a little bit more difficult if every time you play bad, you seem to run to the hills and don't want to accept it. So that's just my advice. You don't have to listen to it. It's just honestly trying to make some sense of this and to help. And I think the tours need to do something to help too, because this is getting out of control.
All right. Well, this is a hot button topic. I know you have a lot of passion around it. That's obvious. But anyways, if anyone has any questions or they just want to DM you their hot take,
I'm sure they will. Yes.
Go to Andrew Lewis Golf on Instagram and also A Lewis Golf on YouTube. Follow a lot of the great content you have there.
Yeah, go ahead and troll me on YouTube. That sounds great. Join the others trolling me.
All right, Andrew. Appreciate the time.
All right, thanks, man.
See you. The Driven Golf Podcast is produced by Joseph K. If you like this episode, like it, subscribe, pass it on to a friend who might be interested. It really helps us out a lot. We'll be back in a couple weeks with the next episode. Until then, remember, in this great game, the journey is the gift. Enjoy the journey.
Yeah. CGX Flex. Josh Jacobs. Trigger golf pod. Let's get it. The swing smooth, but it's ride or die with the crew. Fairway finesse where the players play through. A bad shot's a test how you handle the blues. Are you clutch or do you fold when it's time to break through? Yeah, coaches clocking vibe from the tee to the green. It's more than low scores, it could be the unseen. In the van with the squad, no cracks in between. This rhythm gotta flow like a well-oiled machine. Yo, we all love birds, but do you shine in defeat? Bounce back, strong fight till the round is complete. Rank's just a number, but is your grind elite? Fitting chemistry, that's how teams compete. Word.
Game changer, CGX on the rise. It's hard, it's grit, it's how you alive. From bad shots to comebacks, from rounds to the ride. Find your fit, and your future will thrive.
Coaches hold the keys, but players steer the vision. CGX equips them through skills acquisition. Jacobs drop jewels, it fuels the ignition. Driven with ambition, the man is on a mission. So ask every question, engage with respect. Coaches peep effort, they check and connect. Lessons they share help polish and perfect. They'll guide every move, every check, every step. Yo, these on-course drills mirror college routines. The details, the fine points, the gaps in between. Course form is structured around elite themes. Dreams beget dreams, excellency supreme.
Game changer, CGX on the rise. It's hard, it's grit, it's how you alive. From bad shots to comebacks, from rounds to the ride. Find your fit, and your future will thrive.
Game changer, CGX on the rise. It's hard, it's grit, it's how you alive. From bad shots to comebacks, from rounds to the ride. Find your fit, and your future will thrive.